There's a smart new website that will change the way you invest using social media.
Likefolio.
Here to explain,
A team of brothers, Andy and Landon Swan.
of Likefolio.
And they've always been building out great technology at the intersection of social and trading.
Powered by unique social data. Analyzed by legendary traders. The Likefolio broadcast starts right now.
Powered by unique social data is exactly right. And this episode, we want to get into what that data is, how it works, how you can use it in your trading, and just kind of build a baseline of understanding and knowledge on what these terms mean that we talk about as we go into an earnings season, or we might be talking about a binary event in the future, some sort of trade, or you're reading our content. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So this is a very important episode to listen through, pay attention, and try to understand. Landon's going to put things in very simple terms for us. I think the first question is, when we talk about Likefolio data, what is the difference between a cash tag mention and a brand mention?
Sure. So a cash tag mention, a lot of people might be familiar with that, is when you see a dollar sign and then the ticker symbol. That's usually when a trader or investor is talking about the stock itself. And I think there's a lot of people that track that kind of stuff online. And that's, we do that as well. But the core of what we do is in the brand mentions, which is very different from cash tag. And so just to give you an example, I learned by example, so maybe you will too. You're talking about Apple, a cash tag would be $AAPL. You see that on a tweet, then that's a cash tag, and we assign that. If you talk about a brand mention, then you're talking about anytime someone mentions iPhone or iPod, Mac, Beats by Dre, or the Apple Watch, etc. So any brand or product or service that is owned by this company creates a brand mention when someone says that on Twitter. So people that are talking about that are usually consumers or users, as opposed to traders and investors who use cash tags to talk about companies.
Cool. So cash tag is generally a discussion about the stock.
Right.
And we measure two things, generally speaking, when it comes to cash tags. We may talk about the volume of cash tag mentions and the sentiment of cash tag mentions.
Right.
Sentiment of cash tag mentions means
that's just whether or not people have been talking about being bullish or bearish about the stock itself. So we're looking for specific words related to trading and investing there.
Got it.
Going long, buying here, covering, double top, things like that.
So if a stock has 90% positive cash tag sentiment, that means that 90% of the tweets that had some sort of bearish or bullish tone to them were positive in nature or bullish in nature.
Exactly. And that's a good distinction that you made, was when we look at sentiment, we throw out neutral stuff. And so we only look at, in this case, when you're talking about cash tags, we're only looking at bullish versus bearish. So you say 90%, that means 90% of everyone who has an opinion, essentially.
Cool. And then just to finish up cash tags, because again, that's the smallest slice of what we do. What we have found when it comes to cash tags is that the data on those is it makes sense. It's looking into the past. It's right. So a lot of times, haven't we? They
can look into the future as well. It's nothing like the brand mentions.
But the correlation
is, so a lot of times you'll see, you could have a leading indicator when it comes to volume or volatility.
Okay.
If people are talking about cash tags a lot more, that could be an indicator that more trades are coming. It could also mean that more trades have been happening. Yep. So it's sort of a blurry line there, whether it's looking back or looking forward. When it comes to sentiment, it can be a leading indicator, a contrarian leading indicator. So 90% of people you mentioned earlier are bullish, then that means that 90% of people have been talking about how they were buying. And so you could have everyone in who's going to be in, and the only people left would be, the only action those have to take would be to get out, which would mean they have to sell.
Right.
And so it can be a contrarian indicator.
It can show you when a trade has gotten crowded.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Quick question on cash tag sentiment. If somebody says something along the lines of, I see support here in XYZ, I'm going to sell puts. They don't necessarily say the word long or bullish. Does that get, but it is a bullish.
Right. No, we've got
all
the phrases and combinations down. So yeah, that would pick up.
That would be cataloged as bullish.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it would be cataloged as bullish for two reasons. Number one, because it mentions support. And number two, because it mentions the phrase sell puts.
Perfect.
Yep. Moving on from cash tags to the true differentiator of what makes Likefolio so powerful and great and awesome. Brand mentions.
So brand mentions are really cool because when cash tag mentions, people know what they're talking about. They know that they're saying, I like this stock, or
this
I don't
is a
like
trader
exactly
talking about the stock, and he knows that he's broadcasting an opinion on the stock.
Exactly. Whereas with brand tags, people are just talking about a product that they are using or have heard about, whatever. They may not know who owns that product or what public company that's tied to. We do. We make that connection. But that's what I think makes our data so powerful is it's just regular consumers and users talking about brands and products, and then we tie that to the company.
So the way I like to phrase this is if you think about what we're doing in terms of capturing this data from Twitter or other sources, this is generated by a user voluntarily. Generally, a consumer is volunteering this information about either their opinion or their intent to purchase some product or brand, right? So if you think about it that way, it is the world's largest brand and product survey,
right?
Running in real time with millions and millions of participants. The kind of data that, analysts and marketing professionals and, if you think back to the Mad Men era, they used to pay people, bring them into a room and have a one-way mirror and have 7 of them in the room and try to glean something out of the way they reacted. Whereas we can sit back, take this data in, analyze it in a very intelligent way and have, this margin of error that's so small that we know for a fact that, for example, iPhone sales are either up or down compared to the same quarter a year ago. So that's the power of it's a massive brand survey happening in real time with millions of participants,
and they don't know that they're participating.
Yeah,
if you do a real brand survey, hey, what do you think about this product? Well, and then they give an opinion. They have to think about it. But if they're just talking, they're just volunteering this information. There's no incentive to not be truthful. This is just what they think, and we're just picking it up.
So let's talk about the ways that we pick it up. We pick it up in basically break it down into 3 different categories of data, 2 of which are kind of similar. Mention volume is the overall number of mentions of that brand or product.
Right. That's it. It's just basically a count.
Just a pure number.
Right.
How much are people talking about this? Sentiment is a lot like cash tags, although we use different.
The words that we look for are much different, obviously, like selling puts. Mm-hmm. You don't correlate that to an iPhone. But yes, the sentiment means of the people who have an opinion, positive or negative, how many are positive? That's the number that we put out. So if it says 72%, that means that 72% of people are positive of those who have an opinion, positive versus negative.
Of those mentions that were opinionated.
Yes, right? Yes, of the mentions. Yes.
And then the third category is kind of it's our most powerful category that we've discovered so far. Purchase intent. And so just walk us through another example of how Likefolio is able to glean the intent to purchase from a tweet or other piece of data.
Sure. And I don't want to give away too many of our secrets, but we've got a pretty powerful engine that determines purchase intent. It looks at whether someone's talking about buying the product or not, spending money on this product or service. And that can go in a very wide range. It can be, going to the store, asking it for Christmas, just bought it, made reservations at a restaurant. I mean, it really depends on which product we're talking about, what we're looking for. But essentially, we're able to determine if someone is talking about spending money on the product.
That's super powerful, especially for the bigger brands where volume is higher. So there's a thicker set of data,
right?
And you get to see, up or down. And this leads sort of into the next thing is, okay, now we know what all these points of data are. We've got mention volume of brands, brand sentiment, purchase intent of, again, products or brands owned by the company, and then cash tag volume and sentiment. When you're looking at these, I think it's important for people to understand how to use those, because you could look at Apple, and let's say you look at Apple and it's 92% positive. And then if you look at Southwest Airlines and it's 85% positive, that does not mean that Apple's a better buy as a stock than Southwest Airlines is.
That's a good point.
So let's go through the ways that you would use these data points. What do you compare them to in order to make decisions or to come up with some sort of finding?
I would say that there's two big ways to compare numbers. And this is how we're always looking when we're making our calls on our data. Number one would be against peers. And so your example, Apple and Southwest, you don't compare those, right? You would compare Southwest with United or JetBlue or one of the others and see which one of those has the highest sentiment rating. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, which I tend to favor even more, is comparing it to itself over time. And so you're looking at not just what it's at today versus last week or last month, but I like to go back even further, and I like to say, where is it versus a quarter ago or a year ago? So same quarter, year over year is really powerful, but essentially you want to sort of plot these on a chart and see where is it going, where has it been, because the street has already reacted to where it's been, right? And so if we've got years worth of data that say that a company's sentiment or purchase intent is at X, and now all of a sudden it's at 10 or 20% higher, then the market's priced in X. Maybe it hasn't priced in that 10 or 20% higher move. And so you comparing where it was compared to where it is now is very powerful.
Yeah, I think especially, so when I think about purchase intent, I think of that as sort of a peek into the sales register ringing for the company, right? So how many units it's moved, how many people have eaten at the restaurant, whatever. I think of that as dollars exchanged, as a view into that. And so when you think about that, that is what you want to know quarter over quarter or quarter versus a year ago.
Right.
Because that's the way Wall Street reacts to everything. It's always compared to the prior quarter and to the same quarter a year ago. And that's how you figure out.
And it's important to go a year ago, because a lot of these companies are very seasonal,
right?
Especially fourth quarter, around Christmas time, you can see a lot of crazy spikes. So if you're looking at Q1 and you look back and like, oh, it's half of what it was last quarter. Well, yeah, but last quarter was Christmas. So go back to Q1 of last year.
Right. I think that's a key point. So purchase intent, that's the way I like to look at it, is almost like this is the transactions. Sentiment, especially brand sentiment, I think can be a leading indicator of purchase intent and of other things, because if you start to see people are getting more and more positive about the brands and products that a company makes consistently over the course of 3 months, and it's holding up and and it's moving higher from like a 78% positive to a 90% positive and just holding there, that's an indication that something's going right for the company, that
Right.
consumers are liking what they're seeing from the company. And that's a big deal. That can lead to sales down the road. So that one, I don't think you really need to look, back a year. I mean, it's good to do.
You're right.
But it's just, what's the trend right now for
Because
this
it's
company?
expressed as a percentage.
Right.
So the spike in seasonality doesn't really affect you. You're still looking at a percentage of the whole. And that brings up a good point, because we look at purchase intent as our strongest measure to impact on or to predict future price movings from earnings reports or whatever. Sometimes we can't get that data faster than the street can. For example, if Elon Musk is live tweeting his sales, well, he's going to beat us. It's going to be a tie at best for us, right? So, but if you're talking about another company, yes, we can get maybe a 3-month lead on the street with purchase intent. However, sentiment and mentioned volume both can, like you said, lead purchase intent. And so those two are, I would say, fuzzier in their prediction quality. They're both good. They're not as good as purchase intent, but they're sooner than purchase intent.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And so that brings up, we talk about this all the time on the podcast, and it's our favorite setup in terms of using Likefolio data. And that is, the other thing that you need to pay attention to is what the stock has done.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely critical.
Right.
You can't ignore that.
Right. If purchase intent is up 30% and the stock has already rallied 45%, and there are headlines all over the place talking about high expectations for sales for this quarter. Well, guess what? The purchase intent climb is not giving you an edge.
Right.
That's already priced in. You need to look at the stock price to see what's going on. And so that leads me to the best setups that we do get, which we call divergence opportunities. And that is when any one of these, especially the brand ones, so mention volume, sentiment, or especially purchase intent, is trending in a powerful way in the opposite direction that the stock has moved.
Right. Especially if you got if it's been doing that for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, somewhere in that period, not just a one-day move, obviously. You want a legitimate move of at least a week or 2, but probably more than that.
Yeah.
So a month would be optimal?
Yeah, I like a month. I like anywhere between a couple weeks and 12, because that's a quarter. And so, I like to have about 1 quarter edge on the market. And so that anywhere in that range is really good, because there's a good chance that what we have hasn't been released to shareholders yet from earnings reports.
Right. So you've got divergence opportunity examples could be, I'll just run through them real quick. You've got a stock near all-time highs, and it could be going sideways. If it's near all-time highs and it's going sideways, but you see sentiment fall through, down below 80% for the first time, and purchase intent volume on Likefolio
Making a 1-year low or something.
making a 1-year low or lower than it was a quarter ago or anything like that. That's an opportunity.
That's a red flag one.
That's a red flag that the stock could be ready to drop on the next earnings call or event. We've seen companies warn prior to earnings calls when we've had this type of data, which is just sweet. The other would be, a stock that's been it's fallen out of favor, and it's been falling for months and months or a year. It's just a dog stock that no one likes, and everybody's just kind of slowly selling it off. But you see some sort of rebound or move higher in its sentiment or purchase intent numbers on Likefolio. That can be a fantastic opportunity to start dipping your toe in and getting some of those shares. We've seen it time and time again. A lot of times we'll see it in technology stocks with really fickle consumer line like GoPro, where you don't know how the next you don't know how the next product line or whatever you call it is doing, but Likefolio does.
And
so that's what's
per
cool.
our trading experience, actually trading that type of situation, we found that it's best when the stock's been getting crushed for a little while and is actually starting to stabilize a little bit at the low end, and then you catch that divergency.
Yeah. So divergence opportunity is the big deal.
And the ones you're talking about are when except for the all-time high sideways, the ones you were mentioning where they're going in opposite directions.
Yeah.
So that's like extremely strong. You've also got some where one of the measurements, either the stock price or what we've got, is sideways, and the other stock price or data is going up or down. And so that's sort of a divergence. It's not nearly as strong, but it's also something to consider. If the stock starts rallying, but purchase intent hasn't moved, it's staying flat, it's kind of a, maybe take a bearish position here. And then vice versa as well.
Yeah.
But obviously our favorite are when they're going in opposite directions.
Yeah, those are the perfect setups.
Extreme discrepancies.
Extreme discrepancies have led to extreme profits in the win zone. And so just to kind of wrap this up, we've gone through what each of these means. I think the other key thing for people to understand is that Likefolio is and should be a part of your trading research or your investing research. We think it's extremely powerful data. I've been trading for 17 years or more. Yeah, more. And I've never had access to this kind of forward-looking data. So I'm super excited about it. I think it's the most powerful thing that I've seen in stock trading. That said, it is not the golden goose. Not every time that Likefolio shows something does that mean that the stock will go in that direction. So it needs to be a part of what you're doing.
Right, because there are other factors besides sales, which is crazy. I mean, we have hit earnings reports where we beat the analysts and we knew the number better than they did based off of purchase intent, and then the stock went the other way because of whatever reason. The market predicts it's supply and demand. It's buyers versus sellers.
Super common with earnings. You can never predict what the price is going to do.
Right. And so you have to take that with, a grain of salt. Obviously, having an edge is better than not having an edge. But like you said, it's not like you're going to use this data and hit 100% of your trades.
Yep. So that's the whole deal. That is what we're here for. We are here. Likefolio is here to help provide an edge, right? An edge meaning
a forward-looking edge.
Yeah. An edge meaning you have an advantage over other market participants because of the data that you're holding. That advantage could be anywhere from 55% wins to 80% wins. A lot of times when it's a big divergence opportunity, we've seen that like 85 or 90% chance of success. And, some of those are bigger than others. But the idea here is to get an edge. And if you think about it, if you just think about yourself, you're in Las Vegas, pretend you're in Las Vegas, and someone came up to you and said, that roulette wheel right there, some magic, this person's correct. They're not scamming you. That roulette wheel over the next 24 hours is going to hit red 60% of the time, right? You got 10 grand in your pocket. You got no access to any other capital. What would you do? Would you go up and put 5 grand on the first roll? No, you wouldn't.
It's a great point.
You got to keep your occurrences spread out.
You got to
keep playing red.
Risk management.
That's what you do.
So you manage your risk over a lot of occurrences.
You maximize your number of occurrences because you have an edge. And so you go and you bet 100, 200, you bet 20% of your whatever you want to do. I'm not going to tell people what to trade in their portfolio, but what I'm saying is when you have an edge that isn't 100% lock, your goal is to maximize your number of occurrences. And so the way that you do that, the way that Nick helps us do that on this show and in our content is by limiting your risk on each trade, by being smart about the way that you approach things, using option spreads, all these kinds of things we get into throughout the shows. But the bottom line is through Likefolio, you've got access to data that gives you an advantage over other market participants. And that's part of your trading strategy. And it should be a really fun and cool part of your trading strategy too, that helps you make money. That's what we're here for. So with that, we will wrap it up. I think this was awesome. Everybody's now on the same page. We can refer back to this one all the time. Just to recap, you've got cash tags, which everybody in the world tracks. That is not Likefolio's. We do a really good job with it. I think we do a better job than everyone else, but
the value is
the value is just not that great.
It's okay. It's interesting.
It can be
compared to the brand stuff.
It can be a nice contrarian indicator, but then
I don't think we've made a trade yet based on cash tags, though. It's all brand stuff.
We will look at cash tag sentiment.
We'll take it into consideration.
Just to see because we think it's contrarian. If it's very low, everyone's bearish, and we want to be bearish, we're like, we might be too late.
But the brand stuff is so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. And so we got brands, mention volume, sentiment, and purchase intent. And again, those are measuring what people are saying of their own accord, volunteering this information without really knowing that they're volunteering it to market participants about the brands and products that these public companies own. And so that's what's powerful. That's what's cool about Likefolio. If you have questions about any of this stuff, reach out. Andy@likefolio.com, Landon@likefolio.com, or hit us up on our Twitter. It's just @Likefolio. We'd be happy to answer questions or get more into it there. Make sure you're subscribed to the Likefolio podcast in your favorite podcasting tool, and also get the app, because that's where this data is being made accessible for you. So get the app in the iTunes App Store or on Android. Just search Likefolio, and until next time, have a great day.